Hello, and it's good to be with you this afternoon, live from Virginia. But while I'm in Virginia now, I was just in Europe for a few weeks. It was pretty much a dream come true that I had the opportunity finally to go after spending most of my life by far wanting to go explore Europe and never having the opportunity. Finally, an opportunity opened for me, and I found myself headed to Germany first to visit with one of our daughters and her family. Her husband is stationed currently in Germany for several more months yet. And so she decided to take her children and head to Germany. And she wanted to be close to him. So they rented an Airbnb and she is there with the children. And I went to visit, to help out, and to explore. And man, was it ever fun. So my from the very start, even just flying into Germany and getting a view from the sky, of course it was beautiful, the hillsides, the forests, the villages. And then I took a train from the Frankfurt airport to the little town Eienberg, I think is what it was called. And there I stayed for 2 weeks. But while there, my daughter, grandchildren, and I explored lots of Bavaria and Austria. But from the beginning, again, I was really struck not just with the beauty, but contributing to the beauty was the cleanliness. Now, I have slides, and actually, I need Erin to help me with this because I don't know how to show them. There we go. Even on the train, as we're driving through the countryside, I kept noticing how clean the countryside was. And even the very edges of villages and towns where normally you have the least nice of surroundings, you had little tiny houses and little plots of land where people had gardens and wood piles, and they just kept things neat and tidy. One thing I continually noticed from that point forward was there's no litter. There's also no homeless people anywhere. There's no begging on the streets. There's no filth. It seemed as if everyone who lives in Germany just has an affinity for tidiness and neatness and caring for what is theirs. And this even goes into the bathrooms. I wanted to put up oddly enough, a photograph of a European bathroom starting from airports, and my file size was just too big, and I tried over and over to reduce. At any rate, I eliminated that picture. But even the bathrooms are spotless. They're also very, very private. And so, while you very often, more often than not, have to put a few euros into a slot to enter a bathroom, not always, it depends on where you are. It always was a clean environment. So you didn't feel gross and like, oh, you just have to wash. Every bathroom, everywhere I went was clean. And that just gives you peace of mind. So it may or may not count towards healthfulness. I think it does. Just from the aspect of feeling okay to even use a public restroom. But again, the streets, the towns, the villages, they were clean. People weren't dropping their empty cups and their bags and their debris here and there. Nobody did that. I didn't see a single person dropping any trash. Everything was clean and tidy. Oh, I had to eliminate one of the photos that I really wanted to include, which was of the village where I stayed. I noticed from village to village that there was not an overlap. There wasn't this sprawling ugliness between towns and cities. There were clear demarcations. So you would have villages, and all of the villages in Bavaria and everywhere else that I traveled through Germany, they're old. Even the college towns, the buildings are old and they're very well cared for. So you feel safe and you feel comfortable walking through them. And that that adds to peace of mind and enjoyment. But at the edge of every town, you had farms, and then you had fields and pastures, and then you had forests. You didn't have urban sprawl and factories for the most part. Um, where there were factories or facilities, they too were usually very neatly kept. Still not pleasant to look at always, but there weren't many of them, and they didn't encroach upon the beauty of the villages and the towns. The forests are maintained the way that we're supposed to. God calls us to be stewards of the earth, and that includes um, keeping things neat and tidy and preventing forest fires. So the undergrowth of the forest was kept trimmed back. Everything was just beautiful and pleasant to look at. Where I live on a mountain here in Virginia, and I'm telling you what, people need to be doing this. I've been saying it ever since we moved here. Nobody takes care of the woods, the forests, and many people also don't take care of their properties. And so it's like a tinderbox just waiting for a spark in the hot summer months anyway. Well, everywhere I went in Europe, you don't have that fear that somebody lighting a fire could start a fire, because they even keep their forests and their woodlots clean and free of debris and free of fallen and dead trees and that kind of thing. This is important. It adds greatly to the aesthetics of any area, but it also greatly adds to the beauty. And so whether you're talking about towns, cities, villages, or whatever, it is clean and neat everywhere that I went. Now, the other thing that this picture addresses is no matter the weather, people walk. They walk and they bike. I have videos and lots of images where there are dozens, if not 100 bikes up and down the street, parked, people on them, and it was cold. It was like 42 degrees. It was the time of year where there it's always gray, always overcast. There was like a blanket that I could see from the air of just dense cloud cover, and that's the way it is in this part of Germany. And yet, in spite of the cold and the dreariness and the drizzle, people walk every single day, or they bike, but they're not hopping in their car just to go down the street to the convenience store. Well, partly because only cities have convenience stores. Towns and villages do not. There aren't gas stations on really any corner. You actually have to go into a town or a small city to find a gas station or a convenience store, and even they were clean. But people walk. To they walk to the local farm to get their milk. They walk to their neighbors. I missed the opportunity one morning when I looked out. The Airbnb where my daughter and kids are staying is in a beautiful old village, and the street is at a slope. It's a pretty significant slope, and it twists and turns. The villages are built following the lay of the land rather than trying to terrace and manipulate. And so this particular street has a definite incline. I looked out one morning and there was an elderly woman with a walker walking uphill, up the street. Every day that I went out, sometimes we jumped on the trampoline, other times we just took walks. Often we went other places and went exploring more than we did in the little town, but we also just took walks in the town. And nobody cares what the weather is. Obviously, if it's thundering and lightning, they're probably not going to go out for a walk. But every single day, regardless of weather, people were out walking. And every town and village that we went to, people were either walking or riding bicycles. Streets are narrow. Cars are allowed on most of the streets. Most of the cars are smaller, but still people will park one place and walk everywhere rather than hopping in their car and going from point A to point B to point C. So that is an observation that I made everywhere I went. And along with that, logically goes that there were no obese people anywhere. I occasionally would see maybe a chubbier woman or man, but The kids were all fit, and the adults, there just was no obesity until I went onto the military base. And then I saw a few Americans who definitely have an obesity problem. But in the towns and villages, because people are daily getting their exercise, they're walking to work, they're riding their bikes, and they're whatever, they're healthy. They have a healthy physical lifestyle, and that is really, really important. So we tend to spend a lot of time talking about food, and we are about to talk about food. I assure you, that's always a highlight to me. But we cannot underestimate the very critical importance of physical movement, of normal physical day-to-day activity. Because without that, you can eat the best food in the world and be the least healthy of anyone else. So here's a good example to follow. The second good example: first, cleanliness and care for your property. And secondly, physical activity and active lifestyle, irregardless of weather. But then let's talk about food. Of course, a highlight of mine was that I could just go to the local farm at the edge of the village, put a few euro into the slot, and dispense our fresh raw milk right there on the farm. This I'd heard about. Other people have told me, oh, yes, in Germany and other parts of Europe and France, you can just get milk from a vending machine. And of course, I was always intrigued with that because I think we should have ready access to fresh raw milk. It was just super cool that we could go to a farm at the edge of the village and put our money in and get as much milk as we needed. Now, I don't know if okay, there's another picture. This is at one of the farm stands where I would get milk. They have a vending machine. Everywhere we went had vending machines just like this. You could buy a glass bottle or a plastic bottle for your milk, but you also could buy locally handmade, good quality pastas and granola, yogurt made from the farm's milk, and fresh cheeses and meats and eggs. What a cool idea. You can just go and buy this stuff without restrictions and without having to have permits. And so it makes it much easier for people to eat healthy when they have ready access to fresh, local, good quality food. Now, that said, I I was a little dismayed that the farms in Germany, the dairy farms, and as well as other farms throughout Europe, wherever I went, it seems like a lot of them are following somewhat the American model of confinement dairy, confinement animal operations. However, not fully. I felt perfectly fine drinking the milk, for instance, from this farm, because even though the cows were not out on pasture at that time, they were in a very large open air barn. They had freedom of movement, and I could see that they were eating lots of good hay that the farm produced. Now, perhaps in the summer months, they're out on the pasture. I don't know. The pastures were planted with cover crops, primarily rapeseed and, like mangle beets or turnips and things like that, which the livestock also eat. Even hog operations were not in barns and buildings. I saw many hog operations where the pigs were out on pasture. They all had their own hut. They had a large amount of space out in the open to roam. I don't know what they were eating, but I presume it's better than what the swine in the United States are eating. So definitely better than here. Definitely better quality. We did see a lot of pastured poultry for eggs. We saw egg mobiles. We saw chicken tractors. So definitely, at least in Germany, but other places that I observed, including England, things are being done in a much, much better way than here, and the animals are kept well, and the food is of much better quality. Okay, here are some photos of some meals, just a few, and there's one in particular that is especially special. So on the top left is a sourdough toast with avocado. So avocado toast topped with poached eggs, feta cheese, and fresh sprouts. This was at a little restaurant in Hyde Park in London. If you ever have the opportunity to go, the establishment's name is the Rusty Rabbit. I was intrigued with the name. We were actually headed to a different location, a different restaurant for breakfast when I had just Emma and I. And excuse me, this is not going to hold. I'm going to have to hold my phone. Anyway, we were headed somewhere else and we lost the right screen. There we go. We just happened to pass this place called Rusty Rabbit, and I went and looked in the window and looked at the menu outside and thought, wow, this actually looks really good. It doesn't advertise organic per se, but it clearly was a restaurant that focuses on local, organic, and whole foods. So the sourdough bread, it was excellent. Everything, every bit of that was excellent. And I was just super impressed that I could get such a high quality meal in downtown London. I'll just throw in that I also rented a car in London, but that's a whole nother story. Maybe we'll talk about that in person another time. But this was around the corner from my hotel, and I really enjoyed it, and Emma did too. We had excellent coffee everywhere in Europe. Everywhere we went had just excellent coffee. And I believe that that is a wonderful treat that should not be denied if you can manage. Beneath the wonderful breakfast is just a meal that I cooked for our son-in-law. I did a roast for his birthday, and this I did for the family another time. Now, they're in an Airbnb with a very typical little European kitchen. And as much as I loved the place where they are and where they rented, the kitchen was not well thought out. So there was a 2 burner stove and it was tucked right under the sloping roof. So in order to cook, well, you couldn't use any pans that were very tall. It was difficult. And there was no oven. So our daughter and her husband went out and bought a toaster oven. Toaster ovens are not particularly large. This was larger than most, but temperature isn't well regulated. It's just not easy. But nonetheless, we managed to have wonderful meals every day that we were there. And this was one of them. I show you this because it's Bavarian bratwurst. It's just like I get at Trader Joe's, actually. I'm so glad I can get this in here in the US. But the Bavarian bratwurst is not the corn syrup laden garbage that is sold in the US typically. It's actually good quality meat. And then I was able to get a very good raclette cheese, also from a local grocer. And we had lots of good fresh root vegetables that were organic. And so this is a meal that my family loves. I don't do it often enough, and I hadn't done it for quite a while for these guys. So we had this wonderful meal, and all of the components were sourced locally, and I managed to do it in this little toaster oven. It was just delightful. But the larger picture on the right was just an absolute highlight. We took a couple of days and we went to Austria. We went to Salzburg, Austria. Salzburg is so beautiful that there are no words to describe it. As we were approaching and I saw my first glimpse of the Alps, I just choked up with tears. I was continually in awe. And that included the hotel where we stayed. And excuse me here, I was not expecting anybody to be coming home, but it appears that somebody is unlocking the front door and trying to come in. So the dog's going to bark. Anyway, I am recording right this moment. You've got to get her quiet and exit, okay? Okay, so back to this. So I was able to find a very nice, cozy hotel in downtown Salzburg, and it advertises itself as a green hotel, an organic hotel. They offered a breakfast, which at first we thought the price was kind of steep, 22 euros, which translates to about 25 or 26 US dollars. For children, it was like 6 euros. I wish I could show you the video. The file is just too big. We were awestruck with this food. Clearly they care. And that was clear everywhere we went in Austria as well, the 2 days that we were there. All of the food was very high quality, but this breakfast buffet was all local, raw, organic, pastured meats and cheeses and eggs, and like everywhere else in Europe, fresh, beautiful pastries and vegetables and compotes, just all kinds of wonderful food. So we ended up feeling like 22 euros was a bargain for what we got. It was fabulous and definitely a highlight. So if ever you get the chance, oh my goodness. I was amazed and impressed that people care that much about food. They recognize how important food is. I'm going to come back to Austria towards the end for another component of how all of this contributes to our beautiful health for what God intended. But I'm going to take you now to England. I was very privileged to have been invited to spend a few days with my friend Natasha Campbell McBride, the author of the Gaps books, as well as several others that I often talk about. And she will be coming on the show, I think, next week. We're still trying to figure out, she's traveling right now. Um, we had fun driving, back to driving from London, 2.5 or 3 hours to get to the McBride farmstead, where everything that they consume, everything that they eat at their table is produced on their farm, except for salt and olive oil. Everything, every part of our meal came directly from that small farm. Natasha always has volunteers who come to learn the regenerative practices that the farm utilizes, and the farm manager and his wife live on the farm year round. He and his wife are on the right-hand side of the image there. And then you see 5 of the volunteers. They are 3 from France, 1 from Colorado, USA, and then a German. So there are 3 Germans, 3 French, 3 Americans, and 1 Russian at that table. I just thought it was really cool. It was such an international table. And we all enjoyed everything from goat meat to roasted fresh chicken. There were a couple of ferments, a fermented chutney with fruit from the trees and from the bushes there. Um, just beets that were freshly picked and roasted, just all kinds of things. It was wonderful. And of course, we had plenty of fresh raw butter made from the milk from one of the 2 cows, or both of the 2 cows that are milked on the farm every day. They also milk 13 dairy goats. So the butter is plentiful, the cream is plentiful. We had cultured heavy cream it was on the table, I think, at every meal, and it was delicious, especially over what Natasha calls an apple pie. And to you, it's not going to look like an apple pie, but that top image is a pie that I helped make. It does not have a crust. Natasha does no grains at all in accordance with the GAPS diet. Now, you don't have to stay off grains for the rest of your life. This is just a personal choice of hers, and we got along just fine without any grain. And the loaf of sourdough that I had made and brought as a gift, I gave to the interns or the the helpers, and they enjoyed it in their quarters. But at the table, there was no grain product whatsoever, and we didn't miss it, including we didn't miss the crust for this pie. It was freshly sliced apples from the tree. They'd been harvested this fall. And it was topped with currants and lignan berries. And she made just a light custard with fresh eggs and cream to go over it. And then baked it all together in her Aga stove. You'll see that in another picture. But topped with a generous dollop of that cultured cream, it was divine. It was fabulous. And there was no sweetener in it. There was not even honey. It was the fruit. You tasted the fruit, the beautiful flavors that come just from that. And then the cultured heavy cream was just the perfect accompaniment. So I enjoyed, along with my Emma, who's pictured, she's in the bottom left at the table. We enjoyed many meals, several dinners and breakfasts. At breakfast, I loved the goat so much that Natasha got it out each morning for breakfast. We just had lots of good things, and it was so enjoyable. Not in this picture, and I don't think okay, I'm going to come back to that. While we were there, Emma and I went into the little town, Wyndham, I think is the name, where Natasha told us about a pub that was almost 1,000 years old. She said, you have to go to this pub. You have to go visit the Abbey. You have to go to the pub. We thoroughly enjoyed our time in this little village, even though we had to drive. And just so you know, the roads in England are pretty much 1 lane wide. It's fun. You're driving on the wrong side of the road, on the wrong side of the car, and you have room for one car at a time. And if you have to turn around, well, good luck. That was interesting, but we did go into the town and we went to the pub, and I would have loved to have had a meal there, but Natasha was actually preparing this very meal while we were there. So I had a pint. Actually, I had a half a pint. I had no need for a pint, but I just wanted to do a traditional British thing and have a local pint or half and sit in a seat where untold numbers of souls have sat, enjoyed conversations, solved problems, made business and town decisions, and all of that stuff. It was so cool because literally it was like 975 years old or something. It was insanely old and totally authentic. Nothing, there was there's a bathroom. um, and there's a small kitchen, but otherwise it's as it was, including what now is a cupboard that hides an actual passageway to the Abbey. And the passageway goes under the streets and under the buildings. It was a secret passageway for the monks to be able to get to the pub, I presume, to enjoy some better conversation or actual conversation, and maybe some good food. At any rate, England was delightful, and I really enjoyed the food, and I enjoyed the beauty of the surroundings. I just did not enjoy driving. That's all. But this is Natasha in her kitchen sharing a gem with me. This is a salted pork jowl. Now, her farmhouse is 120 years old. It's a very typical old British farmhouse with a center hall. And in the center hall were hanging 2 big hunks of meat, which I noticed right away. This was one of them. Every year they raise a couple of pigs and then they butcher them in the fall. This is the jowl of one of those pigs. And by the way, the livestock are fed from the farm as well. They have very low input, but this pig was good and fat, and she took the jowl, she salted it, refrigerated it for just a couple of weeks, and then hung it out to finish drying. We were talking about my husband's health problems and what I need to do to help him further to get well. And one of the things we talked about was adrenal health, and my husband has really serious problems with that. So he needs to get off of the one and only medication he takes, which is hydrocortisone for his adrenal lack of functioning adrenal glands. I asked her, well, what do you replace it with? Because he can't just go off of it. And she fetched this. This is the best medicine for adrenal health. You can't just take a bite of it and you don't cook it. It's not cooked. But what you do is you just kind of skim off any unsightly tidbits from the outer side, and then you slice it into strips and then chunk that up and into like dice-sized pieces, and you pop it into your mouth, and it almost melts in your mouth. The flavor is addictive. I must have really needed it because I think I ate about a cup of this piece by piece right away. It is so good. I managed to save some and bring it home to my husband, who also loved it. And so right now in the refrigerator, I have pork belly and one jowl salted and finishing up in my refrigerator. So food is medicine, people, and this is very good medicine. In the background there behind Natasha's elbow is her old-fashioned Aga cook stove, which is something I've wanted for years and years and years. It's a traditional means of cooking in Europe, and I still want one. Okay, moving on. While we consistently ate very high quality, very nourishing food, we were in Europe and we are not in delicate health. And so we said we're going to enjoy the fruits of the land. Now, every town that we visited and every village had usually several pastry and coffee shops. They're one and the same, they're synonymous. The pastries are not American pastries. These are very high quality and much, much less sweet pastries. They were absolutely delicious. Now, Europe does use some chemicals in growing the foods that they produce, but not anywhere near the chemicals that the US has. There are some things that are banned or highly controlled. And so while it's not perfect to eat sugar and grain products that haven't been sprouted or fermented, to enjoy some on occasion for most of us is fine. I would have felt I would have been very sad if I would have left Germany or any of Europe without indulging in some pastries. And so usually about twice a week, we would be out and about, and we always visited a local pastry shop in one town. This particular town, I think, is Amberg, and what we would do is we would get maybe 4 or 5 different things, and we would share them. The children would get a hot chocolate, and we would get cappuccinos or lattes. And we would just sit there and sample and share, and it was wonderful. Now, this is not something that we should do all the time, but if you're not experiencing any real health problems, to do this on occasion should be perfectly fine. But in this case, I didn't feel bad at all about doing it because, again, the sugar content was much, much less than what we have here in the US. So instead of just tasting sweet, instead of just tasting sugar, I tasted strawberries and cream and currants and lemon and all of the flavors that comprised each pastry. It was really delightful. There's a pain au chocolat, that's one of my favorites there. Everything made fresh every day. So you could sit and you could enjoy having a treat along with a cup of coffee and then go home and make a delicious and wonderful meal. So we did indulge. I had no side effects, nothing bad. If I were to do that here, within a month, my hair would be coming out. Within a few hours, I would be feeling sick to my stomach. And I just wouldn't have enjoyed it. So they say when in Rome, do as the Romans do. That doesn't always apply, but in this case, it was definitely an okay and fun thing to do. That being said, on our way back from Salzburg, it was a Monday, I think, or a Sunday, and everything was closed. Everything. And the kids were hungry. And quite frankly, we were all hungry. And it was getting later and later, and we still had a good hour at least before we were going to be home, and the kids needed to go to bed. So we went out on a limb, and for the first time in 30 years, I ate at McDonald's. This is not a posed photograph. I did not know Emma was taking a picture of me. I should know that because she takes pictures of everybody all the time. I was completely unaware until she started chuckling. But she got a photo of me biting into a Big Mac. Everyone had been saying that McDonald's in Europe is much better than in the US, and you shouldn't worry about it so much. Let me tell you, it was every bit as bad as I remember from 30 years ago, and it will be another 30 years before I ever bite into a Big Mac again, I promise you. Maybe 40 or 50. I don't expect to be around that long, and if I ate McDonald's once a week, I probably would live much, much less. So there you have it. The good, the okay, and the really, really awful. Oh, we all felt bad after eating there. None of us felt good. So we won't do it again. Okay, here's that pub that I mentioned, that 1,000-year-old pub. I just had to throw a photo of that in here. I'm impressed with the little villages. This again is in England, in the northeastern part of England, northeast of London. Um, anyway, in all the villages with these very ancient buildings, they're very well cared for. They seem to know that these are treasures, and so we're going to keep on using them, but maintain and take care of them. So the leaded glass windows are even still there. They're not covered up with ugly, aluminum clad. Everything is as it was, and it's just well maintained. So there's that pub. That was pretty cool. Okay, now the last part that I want to talk about in terms of how all of this relates to our health is that if we cannot enjoy the beauty of God's green earth and the beauty of the things that man's minds and hands have created that come from the talents God has given them, then we will not ever have good, sound emotional health. We need exercise, fresh air. We need to come in contact with the sun's rays and the energy that the earth stores from the sun, from running water, from ocean water, from trees and birds and all of nature. And so here is my first view of the Alps. And this is where I genuinely just sobbed. I could not believe the beauty, and this image does not even begin to do it justice. The beauty that God gave us, the beauty of his creation is astounding. There just aren't words. And again, this picture doesn't even begin to convey it. But I'm just urging you all, no matter where you are and no matter where your travels take you, to just breathe it in, observe and appreciate and thank God for his goodness. For as much as man can mess things up, God has given us this beautiful creation. We should be enjoying it. And along with that, God gave us creative minds and hands and talents. And if we cannot walk through an ancient village and appreciate the untold numbers of souls who've walked those same streets, the hands that have built these beautiful buildings, oftentimes, as with churches, to the glory of God. This is the Salzburg Church, Salzburg Cathedral, and it's in the old town of Salzburg. I'm so wowed, even still, just thinking about Salzburg. The beauty of that old city is beyond words. This particular photograph encompasses not just the beauty of man's handiwork, which was meant to glorify God, but it also represents the beauty of music that God gave us. This is a concert hall as well as a cathedral. Mozart played here. And it was so cool to walk into this building where Mozart played, where Mozart walked, and where I don't know many dignitaries throughout history have walked, sat, taken in beautiful music as well as beautiful sights. It is really, really awesome to think about. And then back to the little village in England where I stayed with Natasha. This is just another example of man's handiwork meant to glorify God. This is in an old abbey, the same abbey where the monks dug a tunnel to go visit the pub. This is the actual sanctuary. This is the ceiling and the detail, as well as the placement of the beautiful stained glass windows to play on the shadows and the light shining in on this beautiful handiwork. Every church we went into was like this, just beyond beautiful. All but one. I heard about one that they all went into before I came that was beautiful on the outside and plain on the inside. But other than that one, we went into a lot of churches and cathedrals, and I was just in constant awe of the beauty that man has created in an effort to pay homage to God. And I kept thinking that God's glory in heaven far surpasses even this. And that blows my mind because this is mind blowing. And here is that same church. It was bombed by the Germans during World War II. And so to the left-hand side of the building, you can see kind of remnants and glassed in portions. But this is stunning. This is, wraps it up. There are so many more images I wish I could show you, but I just wanted to share with you those four really important aspects of my trip, because the whole time I was away for 3 weeks, I landed for an hour in Iceland, which was boring to me. I have no desire to go there. Then Germany, then Austria, then England. And we went back to London, just Emma and I, for a couple more days. And then we went to Portugal. Unfortunately, planes got canceled and things got delayed, and we didn't get to enjoy Portugal, but we did spend a night in the airport. At any rate, I wanted to condense my thoughts as I traveled into those four very important categories. But there's a fifth one that is also important, and that is the beauty of family and the emotional joy and peace that comes from building a strong and healthy family relationship. And then, of course, our relationship with God. I see all of these things as reflecting God's presence in our lives and God's love for us. And all of it plays together to build our overall health, both physical and spiritual. And I feel strongly that you can't have strong physical health without a good, solid spiritual and emotional health as well. And that all kind of plays back and forth. So I hope my thoughts make sense to you, and I hope that you have gleaned something from this just as I did. There's so much more I could share and would love to share, but time won't allow. So as we enter this holiday season, just be thinking about all of these things. Appreciate nature, appreciate God's given arts, his own artistry, as well as the artistry of those whose hands he guides and he gives skills and talents to. The beauty of his food, of how we can build strong and healthy relationships around the table. Eating good quality foods that builds a strong physical body. And that's where I'm going to end with this. I do want to say, though, with the holidays coming up, we are going to take a break on Christmas and the New Year's. Next week is when I am hoping that Natasha and I are able to sit down. If she and I can't, she's out of the country right now visiting her mother in Russia. So I'm just waiting on her to tell me when we can do this. Um, Hopefully then we will bring it to you, bring that interview to you next week. We're going to talk about supplements, about are they good? Are they bad? Are they, what? And otherwise, we'll do an Ask Me Anything. And then we'll take 2 weeks break. And then we're going into 2025 like gangbusters. We have big things coming. And we're eager to share those things with you. But we're going to keep it zipped for the moment. As you're thinking about Christmas gifts for your family, though, one thing I want to bring up is we do have a limited supply of, see if I can stand up and show you. Oh, I can't do a good job of it. Our God's Good Table aprons. That's, I'm sure, not a very flattering view. Our aprons are handmade by our friends at Dirt and Devotion, and they designed these for us. They're a very high quality, heavy duty cotton canvas. I've been wearing mine for, I think, the last year. I'm really impressed with the quality, and they are beautiful and they make great gifts. They're only $40, including postage. So Erin is putting a link up in the show notes so you can order, but order soon because it takes a while to get these. We have a limited supply right now. So if you want one, go ahead and grab it. And otherwise, we hope that you will peruse our resource list also for more gift ideas, things like Vita clay pots and pluck seasoning, and cod liver oil can be a good gift too, It's a gift of health. But I hope that you will take a look at what we have on our resource list, what we recommend. A lot of good books, really good books. But we'll leave you for now. Excuse me, we'll leave you for now and hope that you have a good rest of your week. If you have any questions for us, including for an Ask Me Anything, please send them in and we will address anything you bring up. Thank you so very much. Have a great day.